Hello, and welcome back to the Military Matrix. Tonight, we bring you a battlefield development that is already being studied by military planners and analysts around the world, because it represents not just a clash of forces, but a calculated demonstration of patience, intelligence, and modern warfare at its most lethal. In a conflict where speed often dominates headlines, Ukraine chose something far more dangerous for its enemy waiting. And when Russian brigades finally crossed into what they believed was an undefended village, Ukraine revealed that the silence was never weakness. It was preparation. For days before the ambush, the front line in this sector appeared unusually calm. Satellite imagery showed reduced Ukrainian vehicle movement. Thermal scans detected fewer heat signatures. Russian reconnaissance drones reported empty streets, abandoned houses, and minimal defensive infrastructure. To Russian commanders, this looked like an opportunity, another slow but steady advance, another village taken without a fight, another step forward on the map that could be presented as progress. But what Russian intelligence failed to detect was what could not be seen easily from the air. Ukrainian forces had not retreated in disorder. They had repositioned with precision. Heavy equipment was pulled back beyond visual range. Infantry units moved into concealed positions. Drone operators relocated into underground structures. Sniper teams occupied upper floors of ruined buildings. Electronic warfare vehicles were hidden behind tree lines and terrain folds. The village was not abandoned. It was transformed into a trap. Ukrainian commanders had made a deliberate decision: allow the Russian brigades to enter fully. Not partially, not cautiously, fully. This meant letting armored vehicles roll down narrow streets, allowing infantry to dismount and spread out, permitting supply trucks, fuel carriers, and command vehicles to follow behind. Every additional meter the Russian units advanced increased their vulnerability. Every minute spent inside the village tightened the noose. As Russian forces moved in, Ukrainian drones tracked everything. Vehicle types were identified, command vehicles were marked, radio transmissions were intercepted. Unit formations were mapped in real time. Ukrainian intelligence units knew exactly how many soldiers were inside the village, where they were positioned, and how dependent they were on a single main supply route for withdrawal and reinforcement. The ambush did not begin with explosions. It began with isolation. Ukrainian electronic warfare systems were activated first. Russian communications were jammed. Drone feeds went dark. GPS signals became unreliable. Units inside the village suddenly found themselves cut off from higher command, unable to coordinate effectively, unable to request immediate support. Confusion spread quickly, and confusion in combat is often deadlier than firepower. Only after communication was disrupted did Ukraine strike the escape routes. Precision artillery rounds slammed into the roads leading out of the village. Bridges were damaged, intersections were cratered. Fuel trucks at the rear of the Russian column were hit first, erupting into massive fireballs that blocked movement and sent shockwaves through the formation. Within minutes, Russian units realized they were trapped. Then the ambush escalated. Ukrainian FPV drones surged into action, flying low and fast through streets, alleyways, and gaps between buildings. These were not random attacks. Each drone was assigned a target. Armored vehicles were hit from vulnerable angles. Turrets were disabled. Tracks were destroyed. One vehicle after another was neutralized, not in a chaotic barrage, but in a deliberate sequence designed to paralyze movement and morale. Russian infantry attempted to take cover inside buildings, but Ukrainian snipers had already anticipated these moves. Windows, rooftops, and doorways became lethal zones. Machine gun teams opened fire from concealed positions, locking down key streets and preventing organized movement. Mortar fire followed, landing with precise timing to force Russian troops out of cover and into exposed areas where drones and small arms fire awaited them. What made this ambush particularly devastating was its discipline. Ukrainian forces did not rush. They did not overextend. They struck, paused, assessed, and struck again. Every Russian attempt to regroup was met with another calculated blow. Anti-tank teams emerged briefly from hiding, fired, and disappeared again before return fire could be effective. Russian commanders attempted to call in air support, But Ukrainian air defense systems had already been repositioned around the area. Low-altitude helicopter operations became too risky. Fixed-wing aircraft could not operate effectively without precise targeting data, which was now unavailable due to electronic warfare interference. The brigades inside the village were alone. As hours passed, Russian losses mounted. Armored vehicles burned in the streets. Ammunition detonated inside damaged carriers. Medical evacuation became nearly impossible. Small groups of Russian soldiers attempted to break out on foot, only to encounter Ukrainian assault teams moving through underground passages and pre-planned routes that allowed them to strike from unexpected directions. By the time the fighting began to subside, entire Russian company-level elements were no longer combat effective. Equipment losses were significant. Personnel casualties were severe. Perhaps most damaging of all was the psychological impact. Russian forces had entered the village expecting minimal resistance. Instead, they encountered a battlefield where every step had been anticipated. This ambush was not just a tactical victory. It was a strategic signal. Ukrainian commanders demonstrated that control of territory does not always require constant presence. Sometimes, control is exercised through intelligence, patience, and the ability to choose the exact moment of engagement. By allowing Russian brigades to advance unchecked, Ukraine transformed momentum into vulnerability. Military analysts now suggest that this operation reflects an evolution in Ukrainian doctrine. Rather than contesting every meter of ground, Ukrainian forces are prioritizing decisive engagements that maximize enemy losses while minimizing their own. This approach forces Russian commanders to slow their advances, increase reconnaissance efforts, and commit additional resources just to avoid walking into similar traps. Satellite imagery following the ambush shows Russian movements across adjacent sectors becoming more cautious. Engineering units are now clearing routes more slowly. Reconnaissance elements are being pushed forward, stretching manpower thinner. Supply convoys are traveling with heavier escorts. All of this reduces operational tempo, and in modern warfare, slowed momentum can be just as damaging as defeat. The village itself may not hold long-term strategic value. It may change hands again, but the message delivered there will linger. Ukrainian forces showed that they are capable of shaping the battlefield long before the first shot is fired. They demonstrated that silence can be weaponized, that absence can be deception, and that patience, when combined with intelligence and precision, can be devastating. As night fell, Ukrainian units withdrew once again, leaving behind destroyed vehicles, abandoned equipment, and unanswered questions for Russian command. How many other villages are prepared in the same way? How many advances are being watched right now, and how many times can Russian forces afford to mistake quiet for weakness? This was not just another clash on the map. It was a warning written in timing, terrain, and tactical mastery. Ukraine waited, Russia entered, and the ambush was already complete. Stay with us here at the Military Matrix, because this war is no longer only about numbers or territory. It is about intelligence, adaptation, and the deadly cost of underestimating a patient and prepared enemy.